Did you know that we take in more information in one day than our ancestors took in a whole year 100 years ago? That's a lot of stimulation. And so, how do we, in the middle of all of that stimulation, all of that reaction, all that is going on in the world, how do we also experience peace, also experience joy? Join this conversation with Katherine Furnish. She's got a new book called Joy Mastery Method. I think you'll get some good insights in this conversation. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Welcome, 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 everyone, back to another episode of Soul Nectar Show. That show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and life and what we're doing here on this blue dot, spinning around in a solar system, in a galaxy, and how we can show up today with greater love. I'm your host, Kerri Hummingbird, and I love having these conversations week after week. They honestly keep me sane. Opening a field of spirit and stepping into conversation with others who are also being mindful on their paths creates a kind of conversation, I think, that we want to expand on the planet. And there's a lot of conversations going on the planet right now. And if you just take a little look at social media, you'll see a whole lot of them. And, you know, it's what the shadow frequency of opinion and also the shadow frequency of discord and conflict and judgment. And yeah, so there's a lot going on right now. And in the middle of that sort of whirlwind of conversation, some of which is very stinging and leads to actual real life results, real life consequences. We have this opportunity here in this audience and Soul Nectar audience and everyone who listens to this to start different conversations that create different results and lead to different outcomes. And so today we're going to have a conversation about something that might seem challenging to arrive at in the current worldwide soup of human conversation. But we can do it because we're masterful, right? We're masterful people. We can do it. I know we can. We can see the conversations that are happening, and then we can choose to lead new conversations. And that's really what we're here today about, is this conversation of mastering your joy. How can you have joy in the middle of all of this? How can you have joy and witness everything you're witnessing? And I would say it's actually imperative that you experience joy, because if you're going to experience being a witness to all the calamity and the suffering that's going on in the world, you've got to at least balance that out for yourself with some joy and some love and some grace. And so today I have my friend Kate Furnish with us. Katherine Furnish. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. So glad to be here and really resonating with what you're saying, Kerri.
Yeah, it's going to be a beautiful conversation. As we said at the beginning, before we even start the show, we open the space and we just say, Spirit, just take over. We have no idea what we're going to say. We just let it come out from our hearts and from spirit. And yeah, so Kate and I have had conversations before. Usually I've been the guest, and that's been really nice. So it's nice to be able to reciprocate for you here, because Kate's got a beautiful new book out, and it is called Joy Mastery Method. Awesome. We need that right now. And how did she come to this? Well, she's a physical therapist who's worked with thousands of people on their healing journey to well-being. She's a women's empowerment coach who believes when women thrive, everyone thrives. Let's say that again. When women thrive, Everyone thrives. It's important for us to keep remembering that. And she understands the high achieving woman who manages it all and secretly wonders, when's it my turn to enjoy my life? When's it my turn? Because everybody needs something pretty much all the time. You're in the center of the web and you got to help a lot of people. They depend on us to be that web, to be that love, to be that connection. And so how do we keep doing that? Because I think for some people that web is getting a little frayed right now with with everything that's going on, right? So yeah, so we're going to talk about that today, and there's three simple steps: simplify, stable, and source your life are designed to unlock your joy and fulfillment. We're going to talk about this today. And so welcome, Kate, to our conversation over here in Soul Nectar World. Thanks for being here.
My utter pleasure and glad to be here. And yes, I mean, I feel it even as you're saying it, that we are in the center of the web and sometimes we're trying to hold it all together. And what if today in this conversation you just get to let go and be held and see what is here for you?
Yeah, it is important. I mean, whew, it's a beautiful position to be in, right? To be that center of the web, to be that one that is connected to so many beloved people in your life, and depending on what sphere you're operating in, whether it's yourself and your close friends or family, or whether you've moved out into a community space, or whether you're working at a state level or a national or a global level, whatever rate, however far you're radiating your influence at this time, you also have to go back to the center, right? Back to this one right here, because if this one in the center of that web is not doing well, then everybody else starts to also experience the sort of fallout from that.
Well, and you speak to something that I think sometimes we forget. There's a quote by Mother Teresa that says, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other, that we are all connected. And so when we wobble, the whole web wobbles. And that thing that you said twice, when women thrive, the people around them thrive. That really it is a generous thing we can do to take care of ourselves. It's not the way we were taught or maybe raised, that we're supposed to take care of everybody else, or maybe even biologically there's a wiring in women. When we have an infant, we're very biologically wired to take care of the needs of that above all else, which is a good thing. But there's also a maturity that can happen where we are taking care of ourselves so that what we give and care for with others is even richer and deeper and more. But it has to come, it has to be applied to ourselves as well.
Yeah. And this is where, like, it's kind of like our mindset is really important, because if we are sort of in a victimization construct, what's going to happen is that we're going to feel like we need to rescue everyone from their challenges. And then we're going to be putting a lot of effort out into rescuing other people from their challenges that actually doesn't go anywhere, because that's false anyway. You can't do somebody else's work for them. Like, you never can. There's no way you can do that. And so we can find ourselves in a martyr pattern where we're just like overextended, sort of putting a lot of energy on a lot of things that we can't actually do anything with. And that's where we've got to be really mindful of, like, pulling that back and seeing people through a new lens, like seeing people through, I know you can do this lens, switching into that coach mentor, like, you've got this. I know you've got this. You can do this. I'm here for you if you need a touch, but you have all the answers inside of you. And then it's like holding that boundary, holding that line, so that we sort of don't step into the trap of being the queen bee, so to speak, like, no, we're not here to have another hierarchy, another kind of hierarchy. We're here to, like, know, let everybody know, hey, you've got what you need inside of you, and I'm here to reflect that back to you when you forget. And in that way, I feel like we can probably save ourselves a whole lot of activity that is draining.
That's just a beautiful point. And that reflection, some of the reflection is seeing it in yourself. So when we feel overwhelmed as women, we don't feel like we've got it. And sometimes we try more activity to try to calm ourselves down rather than coming back to that calm, still place within us. And I wonder, I want you to expand a little bit because I think what you said is really important about that's sort of a victim mentality to think we have to rescue others. Um, I feel like when I hear you say that, it's because we're once removed, right? We don't really have to look at our own pain if we're busy trying to help someone with theirs. We're just a degree removed from ours. And I want to invite people to come back and yes, you've got this. And you can look at and feel and move through your own pain and angst to discover that you've got this.
I love that you just rewired that conversation, even just in the moment, if you guys saw it, because it's really great. Is that a lot of times, yeah, what's the underlying motivation for wanting to step in and sort of fix it or offer suggestions to fix it or some kind of pathway to fix it? I mean, as a mother, I have worn this ground bare. Okay. Let's just, in transparency, especially with my eldest son, I have worn this ground bare. And, what happens is that, what we focus on grows, right? So, what I focused on for so many years was like, he's different. He's neurodivergent. He's not like the others. There's something wrong here. I need to help him fix it to get back on track. Like that was kind of my mentality, like looking him going, there's something is not like the others here. He's not like everybody else. How can I help him be like everybody else, right? To succeed. And a lot of my focus went in on that for a long time. And what it led to is this pattern of like, then he just kept having more problems because he's like, well, I get a lot of attention when I have problems. And then his brother didn't do anything. He was kind of in the model, so he never needed that kind of support. So he just did things, according to the model and did really well, right? But he didn't get attention, and because of that, because I was problem focused. So I feel like we also need to like be really mindful. This is what I learned from the shamans when I went down to Peru. Oh my gosh. Like it was so amazing because I was used to 20 years on the couch, right? Like talking about all my problems and getting a lot of attention and working myself up over all of this emotionally and every other way. And then not having it resolve itself, it just seems to get bigger and deeper and more, it's like, whoa. And I finally said, okay, this is not working. If you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, maybe try something new. And so I went down to Peru and I started working with the shamans. And I noticed that they spoke Spanish and their indigenous language, in this case, Quechua, and they didn't really understand very much English on purpose. They don't want to know what I just said. They don't care. Okay? It's like, why are you saying all that? Their perspective is it's not necessary. And so they just work with the energy. They just clean up the energy. They can't understand anything you would say to them anyway. So you just kind of have to surrender. And then you feel better after. Wow. Okay. That's so much simpler, right? And it taught me a lot about where am I putting my focus? Am I really putting my focus in the right place if I would like things to be different?
Yeah. Well, and you started this conversation with look at our world, and we have a choice in what we're creating and what we focus on, and we are powerful people. And so what Kerri's saying is, what we've experienced when we think about a thing, it kind of recycles it over and over in our brain. Just imagine a time you've been like in angst about something and you just think it through and think it through. Well, then remember when you say it out loud to someone, it gets a little smaller because you get perspective. Like it might seem so big in your head, and then you say it out loud, like that person hurt my feelings, or it could be just the simplest thing. And then it all of a sudden gets smaller. but it's still a form of recycling. When we experience something, it can allow it to release. When we stay with the feeling of it rather than the thought about it. And so these really are skills of how do we move through our lives. So what she was talking about, the shamans could read her heart and her energy without the words. They didn't have to figure it out or understand the words to feel her. And so that's why they could interact and she felt better because they could see where the blocks were, perhaps, and get things flowing again. So I'm just fascinated by that. I mean, we have energy around us and energy flowing through us. And when we deny it and we just try to figure it out in our heads, we miss so much of what's available to us in life. I want to, if you'll indulge me for a second, just read the first line of the dedication of my new book, because I think it goes to this conversation. The first line in the dedication is, "To all the humans trying to make it in the modern world, may you let go and live this adventure with joy as who you were always meant to be, yourself."
Mm, that's so beautiful, Kate.
Thank you.
And so much of what we try to do is stop being ourselves. Like we're taught almost instantly to stop being ourselves.
Yeah, or try to fit in and belong. And the irony is that so many of us feel so lonely. We wonder if we belong, and there's an isolation happening in the midst of a culture where there's so much conversation going on. And not only conversation with each other, but now there's the element of artificial intelligence being involved in the conversation. So this conglomerate voice with your voice, and you don't know now always where you're interacting with that. If we don't stay connected to who we are, no wonder we feel lonely and lost and not belonging because we haven't come home yet. And so I can so relate to the woman, I was the woman, struggling to figure it out and to, in my mind, like this, I've got to be able to figure this out. And why did I feel lonely and disconnected? And trying to belong places and forgetting that maybe I could start with belonging to myself and belonging to my higher power and my soul.
Yeah, it changes everything, doesn't it? When we are able to really fully connect with the source of who we are, which is never gone. Like it wasn't missing. It was just kind of in the center, covered up by a whole bunch of other stuff that was false, right? So I love the image that Michelangelo gives of carving the statue of David, and people asked him, "How did you carve that statue? How did you know what to do?" And he's like, "Well, the statue was just in there. I just carved away what was not the statue."
Mhm.
And that's what we're doing. It's such a spiritual thing you just said. It's like, wow, we are carving away through spiritual work, we're carving away what is not us. And we're not like throwing it out. We're going, oh, that served me. That garment I wore as myself, as my identity, that served me. That served me for a while. It taught me something about myself. It taught me something about what I like, what I don't like, what I want, what I don't want. It taught me that. And so I can honor it as having taught me that experience. And then I can lay it down and honor and, release and now be liberated, be lighter, right? In my essence. And that there more joy is inside there, right? I mean, the joy is inside the essence, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it
where the
is.
joy is. It's at the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop.
Yeah. It's unlocking your own joy that actually can be there no matter what, even in the most difficult circumstances. We think that joy is one of those other things where you think you want to get there. I want to be happy, or I want to achieve this goal, or I want to get to joy. But what if it's already there within you? And then can we hold that and experience that even in the midst of deep sadness and grief? even in the midst of a world that feels like it's going crazy. And why would that be important to hold that? Because your joy helps me connect to my joy and remember that perhaps it's going to be all okay. Maybe it's even going to be better at some point. And we're just going through a rough patch, a big one, an extended one, perhaps, but an important one to come to these realizations and awakenings of who we really are.
Yeah, and I think that the more we can soften judgment for ourselves and others, the faster we'll get there because it's a lot easier to let go of things when you're not in repulsion to them. Like repulsion energy is gonna push it away. You're gonna try to get rid of it, cut it out of your life, burn it. And when that is the intention, it just simply magnifies it and brings it closer because we haven't accepted it. I feel like allow, accept, embrace, medicine of the gene keys is like really powerful medicine as a mantra because that is once we do that, like you said, we feel it. You were talking about feeling it. We simply experience what needs to be experienced. Like we might have a revelation that we said something that was we did at the time when it first came out of our mouths, and then it came out and we went, oh, you know, and we had that moment of like, oh, that oops, that was a shameful thing to say, and that did not land with me. That's false. You can feel the resonance of false when you start tapping into the resonance of truth. The resonance of false becomes more clear, and then even comes out of your mouth, and you go, oh, that was false. So now, what do we do in that moment? That's what's most important. It's not that it came out because it needed to come out. It needed to be surfaced to the light. So, but what do we do with it? Do we love ourselves through that moment of learning? Do we go, oh wow? Do we let it be a realization? Or do we double down on defense or even direct judgment inside? Or do we direct judgment outside and defend it? So which way are we going to go to defense or soften into acceptance?
Yeah. Yeah. And acceptance doesn't mean that you don't have preference
I have a lot
or
of preferences.
yeah, or integrity in what you stand for. But it also, there's a freedom in what you're describing, if I'm hearing it right, of the acceptance of, and that's the first chapter of the book is called Surrender. I mean, there is a point where if we can surrender to what is, then we start to have choice. When we're constantly fighting against what is, we're so busy fighting or pursuing that we don't really have a choice. We get on autopilot. And when you accept something, then you can look at it and then you can choose. And that comes from a different place than reactivity.
Yeah, because it puts a pause in there that I feel is like self-created safety. It's like I'm safe to allow this idea to exist because
Mm.
right, even though it might resonate in my body as dangerous because of my ancestry or because of my own personal experiences, like it's not actually hunting me, this idea, right? It's just there.
Yeah.
Right? And it exists. And so, yeah, it gives you that pause to become curious about why do I have a reaction to it? What is the trigger? How can I bring myself more power through the medicine of that
Mm.
triggering element, right?
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah.
that because that's what surrender really is. And is it feeling it and experiencing it and allowing it to be there and to be medicine for you.
My dog was barking. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep him quiet. But um, I love what you said about that. That pause is that self-created safety. Because when we are in reactivity, we don't feel safe and we don't feel like we have any power. And so I'm still remembering the listener that might just feel that fear and feel afraid and feel like I don't even have the space to take a pause, and invite you to just a 5-second pause and then expand that to a 10-second pause. And you will find in choosing that, perhaps you do have the 5 or 10 seconds, or even 60 seconds or 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a day pause, it can be momentary. But when we start taking those, we start to reconnect back to ourselves.
Yeah, and it's important to take those pauses because they do accumulate. And what happens in the pause is connection, right, to that center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. Like that actually is what happens in the pause, right? At least that's what happens for me.
Yeah. Yeah. In the pause, you can get quiet with yourself. And sometimes in the pause, you're seeking to understand what you're feeling, or to be with yourself. And sometimes the pause is just quiet space. And when you first pause, if it's new to you, what you may find is not quiet space. What you'll find is the angst and the chatter and lots of thoughts going by. And just go under those thoughts and stay with it, let them pass through, and see if you can find a little bit of quiet inside yourself. Because from there, so much arises.
And it's by questioning those thoughts. Like I was thinking about the time that I went to a spiritual retreat for a week and they said no phones during the day. Like you've got to be, and I'm a mom. So I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? They're used to being able to contact me every 5 minutes. And I had to tell them, I'm told I have to put my phone away. So if you need something, you need to go call somebody else. You need to call my mom or your dad or somebody. And so, but like the whole time, the first day that I did that, I was really stressed out and in fear. Like I was feeling so much fear that something terrible was going to happen while I wasn't, present to answer the phone. Like I was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if they call me and I'm not there? I hope nothing bad is happening, to be like wanting to check it, wanting to see. And the first day that I got through a whole day of that and I looked and there was nothing. Oh,
Mm.
there really isn't anything. Okay. They decided there wasn't an emergency today, and then I started realizing that there aren't really that many true emergencies. Like people think there's emergencies, but they're like an actual emergency would be being hunted by a lion on the savannah and he's chasing you down and going to kill you. That's an emergency, right? Like, let's be clear. But like, there aren't a lot of emergencies. There's just emergencies that feel like emergencies because we're having an inner experience of a thought and the emotions that it raises up.
Yeah. Well, how many days was your retreat?
It was like a whole week. It was like 5 days.
Wow. So how did you feel by the fifth day? Because you explained your experience the very first day. Then how was it to set your phone aside during the day on the fifth day?
I started feeling so much freedom. And actually, because of that experience, I started putting my phone on silent during the day when I was doing things or meditating, or like it's on silent right now. I'm having a conversation with you. So I'm going to be present with you and with the listener. I'm obviously not going to stop this to go have a conversation because somebody thinks they have an emergency right now. Right. It's like, no, I know they don't. So I'm going to be here with you guys. I'm going to be on a client call. I'm going to be with the client, not with anybody else who thinks they have an emergency. And so, yeah, I only recently did I unlock my settings so that my closest family members could bypass my settings, and it would ring if they needed.
Yeah.
And it was because my son was actually going through some challenging things. And I was actually concerned that he might be having more of an emergency than previously. Right. But even then, I've realized there weren't any emergencies. So it's kind of, yeah, it's liberating. It's liberating to realize that you can take a breath and you can wander. Like, how many people listening, how many of you wander anywhere at any time during the day? I know a couple of you do because I watch you on Facebook, but how many of the rest of you? actually just wander and let go. And I admit, I don't often wander. I have a plan for my day. I'm very focused on making good things happen in the world. And so I get a little dedicated to that. And I've got this judgment perfection line, that makes me want to like make it perfect before I head out of here in this lifetime. It is already perfect.
Mm.
But we can give ourselves that break, right? And that rest. And then that's that replenishment. Because what happens, Kate, if we're on constant emergency, like as so many people are, so many women are, they find themselves on constant emergency, not only their own, but everybody else in their life.
Yeah, well, and it's constant input. And I think that's why we're seeing so much information now about neuroregulation. You know, we it's like when you're being chased by the lion on the savannah, we're in flight or fright. I mean, there's a reason that exists, right? So that we can run from the lion. But we just don't spend much time in that calm rest and digest. And it's even unfamiliar to us. So just like we were talking about taking a pause, the first thing you're going to probably feel to it is resistance if you're not used to being in a calm space, because it's very unfamiliar. So it's not hard, just unfamiliar. So it's uncomfortable. Um, and we have so much input now that I think there was a statistic of we take in as much information as a day in a day as people used to take in a year 100 years ago. And I can't even quite fathom the understanding of that. But think of how much is accessible to us. I was telling someone the other day, it's been very hot. I'm in Arizona this summer, and I keep waiting for it to get a little cooler. And there's been a few days where there's just like at night, there's a little chill to the air, and I'm getting excited that it's going to cool down. And there were days I would pick up my phone to look at the weather outside. I'm like, don't do that. Like I caught myself. Like, what are you doing? Walk outside and feel it. You don't need it to tell you. I mean, sometimes you're checking for a reason, temperature gauge, but for safety, but no. Like we're so able to access information now too. It's not just the information coming at us, but it's that we can access it, which is exciting. I can look something up that I want to learn about, but I don't have to look everything up. And I don't have to forget how to use my own intuition and knowingness. Otherwise, I just think that it's all about knowing the facts about everything. And there's so much beyond the factual understanding of life.
Yeah, and we don't actually have like the shamans. Remember the shamans? They don't need to know the whole story in order to have compassion.
Right.
Because we can feel without even knowing what just happened on Facebook or whatever news broadcast you listen to. We can feel it in our body. I can feel it. And I go, oh, something happened today. I don't know what it was yet, but I send love for whatever it was, send compassion for it, hold it in my body. I'm not having anything in my life that's like that. So I know it's not me. I'm just something I'm picking up on.
Yeah.
And because of that web of entanglement, that web of connection, just like we're so connected, like the mushroom mycelial network down under the soil. It's just that we forgot we are. And so it's really important to take that pause. Like you said, use your body, go outside, stand on the earth, check it for your body has a lot of more wisdom than the phone. I actually grew up pre-phone, pre not pre-telephone. The kind of phone I had a curly wire attached to the wall. So you could stretch. I could stretch as a teenager, like from the phone all the way into my room and stretch that cord all the way out. But that was about the extent of it. I didn't have my own smartphone. I
Yeah.
didn't have that till I was working, in high tech. And it was like partway through my career. So I forget how, what life was like without that phone. And also the phone for me when it really started taking over in my life was because I felt lonely.
Mm. Yeah.
And so that feeling of social connection was important. Like when I was getting a divorce and my family was, all the people closest to me were really upset about my choice,
Yeah.
then I could be on social media and feel like I was getting love and appreciation from people I'd never met in person, but there they were. And so we can have this, that could be a substitute for the actual thing, which is simply just being with yourself.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing that you reached out for support too. I mean, there's a lot of good things about it that we can connect with our friends around the world, and we can connect with like-minded people and hear different thoughts too. And there's a piece of that, but then there's also a little part of it that's designed for sort of a positive hit to our brain, just like they would talk about kids would get upset if they didn't have so many likes to a post or something, oh, that's great when someone likes it and it feels good. But if it becomes all external approval or appreciation, then we can really be pulled apart by that. And so there's a caution with that. And I think we're on that bridge because there's people now that have grown up, there's always been smartphones in their lifetime, whereas you and I have a time where we didn't. Or where I'll work with people, um, when you hear a phone ring, if you didn't have a smartphone, when you heard a phone ring, you would run because you only got so many rings until it wasn't there. There's no call. This was also before answering machines. I mean, that's how far back I'm going to go. Okay. So there was an urgency to catch that phone call. And it was before all the spam calls too. So it was probably someone you wanted to hear from. And having to even retrain people that grew up in that time, like, you don't have to rush now. There is an answering machine. They will call back. If it's important, they'll leave a message. There's different ways now. So we've gotten more freedoms as it's progressed, but then also more constraints. It's a fascinating thing. It's part of the human experience, right? How do we assert our freedom in the midst of all the constraints? And how do we utilize the tools that we have rather than being used by the tools that we have available?
Yeah, it's the old question of, are you going to let the horse lead or are you going to lead the horse? It's the same conversation, different circumstances,
Different horses.
different horses, same conversation. And so for women, I think it's really important, right? That for that is to be in your mastery, right? Is to be in your mastery of your own joy. And then that is actually the emulation of a way of, like, just by being that, teaches others by example how to take care of ourselves. And
Yeah.
and so self-care or self-focus has gotten a bad rap as being selfish, but it's actually quite necessary for us to have that, especially if we're empathic, for us to have that time out to digest, like you said, restore, replenish, digest everything that's happened and kind of like be in that receptive state
Yeah.
without being bombarded.
Yeah, and the level of discernment you're talking about too, like Kerri's developed her empathic qualities, right? So she can even discern now when she feels something, oh, that's not from what's going on in my immediate life. I feel it in my body, something happened in the world. Like that's mastery. And joy mastery isn't about being a Pollyanna of like, oh, no matter what, I'm just joyful. No,
Thank you
no
for
matter
sharing that.
what, I can I can also connect to the space of my joy, the space of my peace, the space of my love and compassion. In fact, I protect that because the world wants to chip away at that. And no, like that space is important. That space is the shaman that can have compassion and see what's going on without the words, right? That space is where we can be there for our children, in a large capacity of love and joy. When we talk about mastering it, it's not putting a mask over your life. It's not pretending things aren't happening. It's cultivate, how do we cultivate those qualities, especially when so much is going on? Because I desire to preserve those. I desire to create a society where those matter and, in fact, are recognized in one another. And so as we activate our joy and it bubbles up, I see it in Kerri and she sees it in me and it expands. And when we're sitting here talking and laughing and giggling, others get to see it and it expands. That's what I want to expand in the world. And then the freedom to express your light and your brilliance. That's creating something in the world that's going to, I don't know which word to use, but progress it forward or open the possibilities. Life expands and the world is expanding and possibilities expand when they expand within ourselves. But when we're bracing and we're contracted and in fear against all of this, it's not expanding.
Yeah. And it's a softening, actually. Softening is the pathway, softening and feeling, letting it in, letting it permeate. Like we were saying, repulsion energy doesn't work. So, like, false masks, and this is why people got so mad about toxic positivity, was because what's toxic about positivity? When your positivity doesn't also acknowledge the pain that's present. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the gap, right?
Yeah.
So it's because that's a either or thinking, but what we're talking about is both ands.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's so many terrible things happening in the world right now, absolutely horrendous and heartbreaking. And my heart opens with grief and compassion for people that are going through those things. And at the same time, I can hold that I'm able to have created a life for myself through my family's circumstances of joy, of service, of peace, of compassion, that I'm able to live most of my life in that frequency. Like, that's pretty awesome, right? I can be aware of all these things and I can also maintain, not only for myself, but my community, a pathway to having that peace. That to me is awesome to be celebrating. But it's not by disowning this or turning it off or saying, yeah, I don't want to look at that, or I want to pretend it's not happening, or I don't want to look at that book that Kerri Hummingbird is telling me to read about the caste system. I don't want to know about that. No, read the book, but also do it in community, because what we become aware of and then we can hold in love and compassion and peace, we can actually dissolve. We can actually meet it right. We can dissolve it. We can dissolve it in love, in presence. And it happens by both and. It's not like by shoving it out the door and saying it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true of ourselves too. If we, Kerri's talking about the macrocosm. If we go back to the microcosm, right? A lot of times we have pain in our body and we want to avoid it, fix it, take something, have somebody else be responsible for it. What if we could just meet it and accept it and soften into it and love it into transformation? And I'm not saying that you don't need support sometimes, right? Here's my medical disclaimer of, yeah, sometimes you need support and you need outside eyes, but don't discount that you can come to yourself and feel what's there. And it might be as simple as it just wants to stretch. Just wants, oh, I just need a little stretch right there. And then you're like, oh, and you discover your power to interact and transform. And I had an image this morning of like being in a fenced yard, where the fence kind of keeps things out, so you can feel safe, but then it also keeps things out. And when you take away the fence, you're going to feel things and see what's coming, but you can also still stand your ground in that. And I guess that's part of the stabilize in your life. And what Kerri's talking about, what I'm hearing her and seeing as an example is this capacity in this both and. You develop a capacity to hold both of them. When we don't want to look at this one, we don't want to look at this one, we limit the whole experience and our capacity becomes very narrow. And so overwhelm becomes very prevalent in a narrow space. Whereas if we have a wider space that allows the spectrum, we develop a capacity to be present with it and to stay intact.
I love what you're saying. And when you were saying, I was thinking about the walls or the fences, right? Those are very rigid, and rigid places tend to create intensity,
Yeah.
right? And so we could just think of it as like, instead of a fence or a wall, it could be just like a buffer,
Mm.
you know, like a filtration system,
Well,
you
I'm
know?
getting an image of a stream. Like think of boulders in a stream. Rigid places create intensity. It creates the swirl and the rapids. Whereas if you have reeds, it may slow it, but it still passes through. It doesn't have to go over or around. And actually, the water will eventually carve the rocks and shape the landscape. But that's just, can you get a visual now for what she's saying? Like that rigid place that creates the intensity, whereas the fluid places, softer, there's flow.
Yeah, and that creates stability. Like it's probably a counter to what people think, right? Because a lot of times we think if we want something stable, then we need to build it like really strong with like really firm boundaries and, like walls. And, it's like the little pigs, we need like the concrete walls for that to really,
The
the
brick.
brick walls. I made my house of brick, and no one's going to blow me down. So like we would start to think like that's what creates stability, but actually not in a world that's constantly changing.
Mm, yeah.
Be like
And
water.
and the rate of change, like that's what I was writing notes of, like we have, if we can't allow change, if we want that stability, like we want to get there and then we want it to stay there. Well, but it doesn't, because life is changing. And we know now life is changing at a rate faster than our ability to adapt to it. So if we're still chasing the change, we don't have that right now. But if we're staying within ourselves and letting the change flow, maybe we have a better chance at survival.
Yeah. And then that just comes down to the mindset of, do you believe in a benevolent universe or one that's going to condemn you? And that's an important question to reassess, I think, for everyone, because it's going to be easier to surrender to life if you believe it's benevolent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that you also wanted source, so source is, of course, I feel like is our source. All of this is designed to help source our essence shine more, right? Come out from the center of us,
Yeah.
radiate more, be more part of our lives, more regular part of our lives, more immersed, not like something that we bring out on Sunday and say, "Yay, I'm with Source today, I'm with God, yay!" But like, no, like every day, all the time. It's like the more we can bring that presence in, right? The more that we practice everything you're saying, the more we allow things to soften us, we allow things to move us, we allow ourselves to open and the layers and the armor to come down and the false masks and allow our true spirit, who we always were before all that stuff got piled on, to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a process of I think you told me this story, and it's in my book, so I'm not going to get the geolocations correct maybe right now, but there was a statue um, that of a Buddha that monks had, and they were being taken over, and they decided this golden statue, they wanted to preserve it, so they covered it with mud and cement and concrete. And then when everything was lost and taken away, no one bothered this because it didn't look like anything of value. And then years later, they moved it to another monastery, and um, a chunk fell off, and someone noticed it, and so they started to peel off these layers, and what was inside was this golden Buddha. And it was there all along, but things, they had put it there to preserve it. But things do get piled on us, and we take on armor and we stay hidden. And so we're describing something that sounds easy, and it can be easy, but it's not necessarily in the blink of an eye that these processes happen. Sometimes there's quantum leaps and shifts, and there is something, it is a paradigm shift, though, of looking at life as for you and opening yourself to the miracles and the beauty along the way, which I can say I did not see for a lot of my life. I felt resistant to life and hurt by life and unhappy with life and felt like I needed a lot of protection. And so there is a process of moving through to that other side. But when you can just open the door, what if life were for me? How would things change?
Yeah. What if this person perspective thing that triggers me, makes me feel angry, is actually showing something in me that's looking for love, that's looking for understanding, a voice that didn't get to speak, a part of me that felt abandoned and suppressed. And it's just asking me, it's like saying, "Hi, I'm over here inside. Look at me, please." And yeah, and when we slow down and feel it and listen inside about the thing, that's when we get those quantum shifts because we have a realization. And realizations are like big light bulbs in the room. It's like, boom, okay, I see what I was thinking. Oh, and that was because when I was 3, this thing happened. Oh, okay, now I don't need to live that story anymore. I can change my story. And then because I change my story, I don't need to project my story onto every single person in my life. Getting back to that web that you
Mhm.
were talking about, and how, like, a lot of times what we're doing is just playing out our own trauma wounds on in our relationships. And so we can stop doing that piece by piece as we have these revelations. And whoa, it opens so much more potential up, for all of our relationships. And yeah, such a beautiful process. I know that you've just written, I haven't read the book yet, but I know it's beautiful. I just know you, and I know the book is definitely beautiful. You guys, again, it's called The Joy Mastery Method. 3 steps to let go of struggle and enjoy your life now. And it's available on Amazon. And so you can go get your copy, and I'll put the link down below so you can go check that out. And you can also just check out Kate. From time to time, you do summits and things like that, right? So, I mean,
I
it's
do.
like
Yeah.
really great summits that she puts together. Lots of wisdom in a short period of time. So definitely get on her email list, and I'll put all that information down below so you guys can reach out to her. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up the call today?
No, just my gratitude for getting to be here today, and my call to each person listening. Like, thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are, and seeing your soul and your essence shine is really my joy. And so thank you for connecting to yourself and then sharing yourself with the world in your beauty and your brilliance.
Beautiful. I love it. All right, everybody. We'll go get Kate's book, and share this out with anybody that, you think might appreciate it. And always by invitation. I always like by invitation to say, oh my gosh, I just listened to something that really supported me understanding how to move through this current time on the planet. I don't know if you'd be interested, but I loved it. Would you be interested? And ask permission first. It's just things get received a little better when there's permission involved and then just like, here, you need this. It's like, whoa. So, maybe not confront somebody today, but like offer it in a gentle way as something that helped you. If it helped you and served you. Of course, we want to hear your feedback and comments. So anywhere you leave comments, we're going to listen. We're going to respond. We appreciate you. And you can always get involved a little bit deeper in Soul Nectar Show by going to soulnectar.show and signing up on our email list. And yeah, get involved. Come be part of community. All right, so here come your kisses, everybody. Would you like to join me, Kate? I'd like to give everybody kisses on the way out. Here come your kisses. Here they are. Love you guys. We'll see you next week on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken away to show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.